In an attempt to add more production value to this video, I did a bit of parkour to get an area that I shouldn't have got, and a bit of B-roll. Unfortunately, this goblin simply wanted to throw hands, which kept turning my character around, so you get what you can get in this type of video. We're going to get there, we're going to improve, but for now, we need to ask one very important question. Just why does the Witcher 3 environment art look like this? Big thank you to the Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. You can support from £1 a month or join the channel member tier for exclusive videos, feedback on your work, and exclusive Discord. Let's get started. Now, one really cool thing is I want to go focus on the portfolio capture for this first, right? So let's look at the beauty shot that we have of the buildings. Really lovely stuff from The Witcher 3. Again, one of these games that is holding up all these years later because it's just been approached in such a clever way. So if we have a look here, we just got, a typical sort of blending between shaders. I know they have a very specific way of blending their shaders. I think you can actually find a breakdown of this on Polycount. But what's interesting is when we start to look at the wireframes, there's one thing that I don't think we've had in previous topology videos. And that is, if you look at where this goes, like this is the bottom of the door. And we have this huge buffer zone. Wow. Really cool. Now, that huge buffer zone is so clever. Like, I don't know why I've not thought this before, or, it makes a lot of sense, right? So this building, you probably have this building being used in a lot of the Witcher world. So if you have sort of some terrain that's kind of bumpy and whatnot, if you have your building and it is, a standard sort of straight floor, you're going to have these gaps underneath. So by adding this buffer zone, and we also see it here on these modular pieces, adding these buffer zones, like maybe it looks like maybe a meter. This one's probably like 4 or 5 meters. It just ensures that no matter what happens, even if it gets nudged slightly, if something happens, someone moves it, level designer moves it, terrain readapts to it, it's always, you're never going to get like a gap, essentially. So, which is really cool. You can see it here, right? So we know that a bunch of stuff is underneath here, but it just ensures that there is no gap. So yeah, adding a buffer zone to the bottom of your buildings, really clever idea. I think that is something I need to do with, the stream project that we're doing. We see a lot more of sort of the, it's interesting, this way the wireframe's quite organic, right? You remember when we looked at the Last of Us ones, they were very sort of, straight and, not like my drawing, straight and mathematical. Here, it looks like they're kind of working on getting the vertex points in an averaged sort of area so that they can vert paint between things, instead of just having perfectly straight wireframe going across the whole thing. So that's why these wireframes look a little bit more sort of organic in nature. Still see a lot of the same things, even though like we've got some tri-fanning here, right? So you can see that we go to 2 to 1, we go to 2 to 1, 2 to 1, 2 to 1, and then 1 1. So it's not like there's no system to it. It's just organic sort of approach to it. Same on the sides, just putting these as equally as they can go so that they can be blended between or whatever needs to happen with it. Is there anything else on here? No, like this is one of the exceptions where again, you've got a lot of little sort of damage on corners, and we often will go back into a single point on that damage. Again, using triangles is fine. There can be some bad advice out there that using triangles is bad for game res meshes, but again, this is, do the research on it. You're always going to find that there is tri-fanning and triangles going on. Same sort of deal here, right? It's very bumpy in that Witcher art style, adding to silhouette and then tri-fanning into points so that the verts carried on from that can be a lot less in density. Essentially, it looks like on the pillars here we've got some floating decal sort of type stuff. Let's go look at the beauty shot and see what that is. Yeah, so it looks like little planes with either sculpted. Usually you can sculpt this damage onto a plane, sculpt it back, bake it, have it as like an alpha mask, and just sort of drop this in random areas, right? So we can see that here. We've got this sort of little alpha strips that are adding damage to corners, which is pretty cool, and then mixing it up with some modeled in damage on what they're doing. It's interesting that they don't tri-fan downwards, right? Because this is a buffer zone, so you know it'd be interesting to know why there is the area that is going to be underground. You know, do you need those verts there for a specific reason, or can you tri-fan down? Sometimes, you know, you've got to do buildings fast, right? And you can't account for every single thing. But yeah, it's just curious to see these types of topology choices. It's really cool stuff, though. Oh, yeah. So this is probably a separate asset because this is not on the wireframe. So this is probably built on top because I can't see it here. So the module for the building is probably that. And then all this stuff is kind of dressed on afterwards. And here we get our sort of modular kit breakdown. I say modular kit, it's probably bigger chunks of geo that are snapped together. Nothing too crazy here. Again, just triangulating where possible. Using separate meshes and just letting geometry flow into it because you don't always have to merge stuff out of a single piece. Again, the buffer zone down here. And anything up here, again, really cool stuff. Have the polys in the round bits, and then just, you know, use simple geometry when you're going inside for it. Arches, we cover arches all the time. Nice little separator down the middle. You know, nice amount of polys. This might be, you know, looking at the arches. There's probably a little bit of depth here, right? Because if there's a little bit of depth there, you don't have to merge it, which is the case here. Because historically, when we've looked at like the last of examples, if this is a flush surface, you usually see this, right? You kind of go up, up, then up again, and then have a separate loop. But because this is in front of the wall, you know, make your life easy, right? Just have this as its own sort of geo. And then, you know, go in with your mesh over the top because it's got depth to it. So you don't always have to merge everything into one watertight mesh because you're going to have to just cut the geometry around it. See it here, right? These are all just separate pieces, duplicated, thrown in, duplicated, thrown in, duplicated. The green arches here are, you know, separate. So it just makes life a lot easier. Because some people do model out of one mesh a lot, I found, when they're starting out. There is a time and place for it. All right. But for environment art, the more flexible you can be with this, the better. As a general rule, starting out, right? There's always going to be a specific workflow at your studio, but you know, just make sure that you are, you know, following what your lead says. We've got some catches from game, so I want to bring attention to this, right? So even like, you know, however long it will go, 10, 11 years ago, you know, this is not just a tiling texture on a flat plane 10 years ago. You know, these are separate pieces of, you know, chamfered polycubes with, you know, maybe a tiling texture on them, sure, but they are on a flat plane. So, you know, if you have these buildings that are meant to have these big in-depth shapes, especially now with nanite, if you are using that as a workflow, one big thing I've noticed, even with like Assassin's Creed Shadows and all the latest games, rooftops are now, each tile is a mesh. Whereas historically, you know, not too long ago, we were using flat textures and modeling in and pushing some in and out. Now every single tile is a mesh, right? So yeah, all these are separate meshes, right? And it gives it this nice sort of the detail it needs. With the roof as well, whether things are a tile or not, these are all separate alpha planes just floated on. And what's good about this is there is a really good article from Polycount. I have it here. I'll link to it. It's very old, but it's still just so good. it goes over, when you look up at a roof from a 45-degree angle, it's going to look blurry if it maps in a certain way. But if you add, geometry to it, it's going to help sell the shape and help the texture retain its sharpness. There's a lot of really cool technical stuff in here, like how to make the texture, how to make the base roof, modeling into the roof, again, to give it shape so you're not looking at a flat 45-degree angle from human level. It just adds nice bumpiness. You can see it here, right? Flat and blurry, and now nice and bumpy. So yeah, this article is really cool. It goes over a lot of stuff like the modularity of the buildings and how to fit them. But I think specifically the roof tip is very good. Put detail into your rooftops. They deserve it. They're their own little character in a way. So I thought that was cool, and it justifies sort of what we have in these rooftops. All the geo is working the way it should. Same thing here. Each plank is separate on here. These bits again are separate polygons, polycubes, whatever you would call them. For the arch, I thought again the arch is cool. It's got these nice chunky chamfers on, and again we tri-fan down, so we've got like a bevel, and then we're just joining those up into a single area because there's no need. And why don't they, for example, go like this, right? Why don't they just go, imagine this is here, this is all the same. Why don't they just go like this? Let me know in the comments why you think they don't do that. Why are they going up like this? Why aren't they just going all the way down to a single point? I'll let you answer in the comments. See what you think. Nice symmetry line. Keeping center lines in stuff is good because you can always half it. There's lots of iteration in the games industry, so the more you can half stuff and work on it again and put it back, the better. Yeah, I thought this was cool. Nice texture on it and stuff like that. This was the area I had to parkour to. So again, with this area, very organic, chaotic wireframes because it's meant to be that way. It's ruins. It's, down in the dips, down and dirty, whatever accent that is. So you're gonna see a lot of like chaos. So usually the way you model this sort of stuff is you put the texture on first so that you know what to model around. Because if you were to put this wireframe and then unwrap it and try and figure out what texture you're going to put there, it's just absolute chaos. So you'll see they would have, mapped all this brick texture to some basic geo, and then they would have, cut around it following the sort of shape of the brick. Which again, you can see here, right? Lots of long chaotic debris and stuff like that. You gotta sort of go off the texture first. But yeah, lots of triangulation up to where we can go. Lots of modeling in and out. We don't need any. We've got a lot of detail on the edges here. But what happens is they cut the wireframe as soon as they can, so they can just go across like this. Now you have to remember, I tried to untriangulate this, but it's still coming from the game. So it would probably have less triangles outside of Blender. There's something to keep in mind as well. Same here, right? We've got a brick wall. Obviously, these are a bit low poly nowadays, but it's, this game was a lot older, right? So floating bricks in, look how much they're adding to the edges. Like the amount of detail in just making these edges feel like nice and organic and destroyed down here and popping the bricks in and out. It's why I love level art and environment art, that sort of stuff, just helping sell what the player's going to be in as well. Yeah, it just looks really cool. Obviously, we have more techniques now to do this, but this is still the core fundamental technique. We just throw more polys, we maybe throw some edge decals, maybe we throw an RGB mask, but the underlying sort of fundamental for it is still very similar. Again, just lots of sort of organic modeling here. Yeah, really selling the detail and triangulating out when they can. But yeah, I think that's a lot of the wireframes. I think really, this foundation thing here was really cool to see as well. A lot of more of, if we compare this to the Last of Us stuff, very different wireframe styles for, square buildings, right? So it's really cool to see those styles reflected in that art direction. I'll link to this cool stuff about the rooftops. Overall, good polygon usage, the same trends we've seen in other videos, a lot more organic in nature, these wireframes are. And we learned about the cool grout that extends down into the floor so that you never get some floating building. But other than that, really cool stuff. Thanks again for, the artists that provided. Oh, let's just make sure they're referenced in. Yep, artists put their stuff in. I captured these from the game. And the reference for this is on the poly count here. So thanks to all those resources. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.